Did you know that the FDA, the organization that monitors the quality and safety of our drugs, doesn't run any of their own safety studies?
What?
Instead, they look at the data given to them by the pharmaceutical companies themselves and trust they are getting the full picture in order to determine if a drug is safe for market or not.
Now there's so many medicines. They got this prescription stuff that they advertise on TV, and I swear half the time the side effects are 50 times worse than what the medicine cures.
And while this process is fairly well regulated within the United States, it isn't in other parts of the world, including China and India, where 80% of the active ingredients in our medications are manufactured. These are active ingredients that pharmaceutical companies in the US purchase and use in their own drugs. So when you're walking down the aisle of a drugstore, how do you know which medication is safe and effective to take and what isn't?
Can't kill Saint-Jacques. Death on a leaf.
And if you do have to take prescription medication, how do you ensure that you are taking the best product possible? That's what we're going to dive into today. So as you probably know, there are two types of medications that you can get. You can get brand name or generic. Brand name drugs are created and patented by specific pharmaceutical companies, and only they can sell that specific drug for 20 years. This is a huge advantage if they can get it passed by the FDA. Brand name drugs must go through years of rigorous testing in order to determine that it works, what dosages are most effective, and to determine any safety or adverse side effects that may occur. Generic drugs are a bit different. Once that 20-year term for the patent runs out, other pharmaceutical companies can now also make that same drug. But they must learn how to synthesize that drug on their own. In other words, the original creators are not going to give away their secret recipe to other companies to try and mimic.
How do you make them?
I'm a trifle deaf in this ear. Speak a little louder next time. Who wants an everlasting gobstopper?
They have to try and figure out that process all on their own. So what they end up doing is reverse engineering the production of this drug, which can take up to years to accomplish. Once this medication is created, it must take the same form as the original drug, whether that's a capsule, a pill, a tablet, or an injection. Then they test the drug in a lab to make sure that it dissolves similarly to the original drug using a stomach acid-like solution. They then have to prove that the drug is bioequivalent, that it reaches a certain concentration within the blood, and they do this amongst several dozen people. And for generic drugs, the blood concentration is allowed to range from between 80% to 125% of the brand name's concentration. So what this means is that you can get 20% more or less of the medication that you think you're taking. That's a big difference. These companies that produce generics also must fight legal and regulatory battles to get approved. But there is a substantial prize for the pharmaceutical company that applies and gets approval for the generic license first. They get 6 months to sell the drug without any other generic competition. This is called the first to file advantage, and it can lead to many millions of dollars in extra revenue.
I gotta do it, man.
And since all humans respond to incentives, this has led to companies looking for competitive advantages wherever possible. And this includes manufacturing drugs overseas where FDA oversight is much more limited. You see, if you're a pharmaceutical company in the United States, the FDA can show up to your lab at any moment without any warning and ask to see everything. Your lab setup, your safety data, and every log that you have. But if the lab is in India or China, they must be given weeks of advance notice as the FDA has to get a travel visa, they have to make sure the right people are in the lab, and this is also just a good diplomatic gesture. The result is that many pharmaceutical companies, and especially those in India, will spend those few weeks prior to the FDA coming, forging data and cleaning up their labs to make everything look spick and span. Now, I'm not saying that all of these companies are fraudulent, but it has happened enough times that is very concerning. In fact, researchers from the FDA have found that 50 to 60% of the drug data sent to the US was fabricated. These companies substituted lower purity ingredients for higher ones to reduce costs. They would crush up brand name drugs and put them into capsules to be tested in lieu of their own drugs. And at times they would just completely fabricate their own data, and they even forge their own standard operating procedures. And I have to reiterate, these are companies that are manufacturing drugs that you may be taking without realizing it. So what can you do to decrease your likelihood of taking these contaminated medications? Number one is avoid going on prescription medications if at all possible. This isn't to say that you shouldn't take medications that your doctor has prescribed, but the majority of medications are often not necessary if you fix the underlying imbalances causing those issues. This is true of conditions like reflux, high blood pressure, diabetes, hormonal issues, high cholesterol, and many more. And I know this is possible to get off of medications because this is precisely what I do for my clients in my work. Number two, if you must be on a medication, always take the brand name whenever possible. Remember that brand name drugs must go through a much more stringent regulatory process, which helps better ensure safety. They also contain the amount of drug that they say they do, as opposed to generics that again can have 20% more or less than they say on the label. And number three, avoid taking medications that come from India whenever possible. Now, I hate to say this, but it is the truth. They are the worst offenders when it comes to lying about the quality of their drugs, and China really isn't that much better. And if you want to know where your medication was produced, simply look at the pharmaceutical company's name on your package and look it up on Google. And if you enjoyed this video, I think you will love this one as well on the 10 tribes that were discovered that have perfect teeth but never brush or floss. The secret behind their great dental health is something you won't want to miss. Hope you guys enjoy, and I'll see you next time.